split decision, and still.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the Split Decision YouTube channel. My name is Chris Ferguson. As always, joining me is your co-host, Tristan Lauder. And today we are both joined by the PFL light heavyweight contender, Razor Rob Wilkinson. He's 16-2 overall, undefeated in the PFL. All 3 fights under the new banner have been finishes, and 97 seconds was all it took last time out to secure the win. He now fights Omari Akhmedov on November 25th for the PFL light heavyweight world title and a cold hard milli in cash. Rob, how was that intro? Did I do you justice, mate? Is that any good?
Yeah, it was a good intro. I was enjoying
it. How you going, mate? 2 months out, just under 2 months out, I should say. How you feeling?
Yeah, feeling really good. Training's picked up and, full fight camp mode at the moment. But, life's, just kind of training, eating, sleeping. But, yeah, I'm feeling really good in the gym already. I'm feeling super fit and, excited for this fight.
Good to hear, man. Good to hear. We'll get into the fight in a little bit, but first off, you've mentioned that you're a habitual journaler. Why is that something that's important to you?
I don't know, about 10 years ago, my sister suggested that, asked if I ever set any goals, wrote any goals down, and that was kind of the first time I did that. I set some short-term, medium-term, up to 5-year goals, and I kind of looking back, achieved everything I kind of set out to do. And then actually, one of my training partners back home, Khan, he was really into, journaling and kind of that sort of stuff. And I think he probably was the one who got me onto it. But, I have a daily planner where I just kind of write down what training I'm going to do that day, any appointments or anything. I usually write down a quote and then a little just a little thing to kind of motivate me, or what do you call it? Whatever, kind of just something to I write the same thing every day, kind of that, saying whether it's going to be, becoming a world champion in 2022 or, at this stage, it's, I'm going to beat Omari Akhmedov on the date, place, all that sort of stuff, kind of just writing down every day. I think it just helps me, stay accountable to my training. And, some days you don't want to be there, or some days you might want to slack off or you're sore. But I find when I am using that every day, I'm like everyone else. Sometimes I'll kind of forget about it for a week or two, especially if I don't have a fight. I might not be using it. And then I kind of look back and I'm like, oh, my training hasn't been that good over the last couple of weeks, or hasn't been as good as it could be. So it kind of just helps me, stay accountable and helps me remember what my goals are to stay focused on.
You mentioned writing down some quotes there, Rob. I'm just wondering if there's been any that have particularly inspired you recently that you've maybe been writing down.
I've been writing down the same quote for a while, probably most of this season, or one of the main ones. But one's from Conor McGregor, and it's what's it say? It's hard things become easy when you commit yourself fully, and that's what I've kind of done to my, I actually think I wrote that down for the first time a few years ago, and I kind of, have all these goals to be a world champion and stuff. And obviously that starts well before becoming the world champion. So, I'm kind of trying to be consistent, and I really like that quote. And, when people say the fights, you make it look easy or whatever, that's because of, I have committed myself fully, and all the hard training and everything I've been doing for the last years and years and years, kind of adding up and paying off.
Talking about making fights look easy, your striking has obviously come leaps and bounds from where it used to be, back in the UFC stint. You talked about rebuilding your striking base after the Izzy fight, training at CKB. You took some kickboxing fights, did some boxing. How long was it until you kind of felt you were completely comfortable on the feet again?
It was probably when I started fighting in MMA again. I had a Thai fight straight after, or later that year after I got released from the UFC. But it was for a Tassie title. It wasn't anything big. My opponent wasn't very experienced, and I was very confident, even though people over social media were saying that he was going to beat me and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I think they only thought I knew how to wrestle, but I think I knocked him out in about 40 seconds. I had another then I had a kickboxing fight where I got a knockout against a tough guy. He was a Tassie bloke as well, but he was known very hard to knock out, and I got a head kick knockout on him, I think, in the second round. And then I fought someone who was much more experienced in kickboxing and had fought for some Australian. I think he'd just come off a world title fight that he lost in kickboxing, and I went the distance with him. I went 5 rounds with him and beat him. Dropped him once, and then I started to feel a lot more comfortable, and then I had my first MMA fight back from that, and against Dylan Andrews, and I felt, I think he thought I was going to come in there and wrestle him, and I outstruck him. I kicked him in the leg a bunch of times until he ended up shooting on me, and then since then I've just felt way more comfortable in my striking, and still been focusing on it. I've had a boxing fight since then as well. I fought an ex-Australian cruiserweight champion and a state champion, and he'd never been knocked out. He was he's a really tough guy. He's a good Tassie fighter, and I think I finished him in the 5th round. So it just kind of started adding up, and then I've been able to show that in the PFL this season, which has been nice as well.
What was the process like going back mentally and realizing that maybe you weren't quite at the striking level that you thought you were going into that UFC run?
UFC was my goal since I started, and obviously when I got that call up, I was very excited. But I probably wasn't quite ready. I was ready to compete against those guys. I just don't think I was ready to compete at the highest level, and that's one thing I learned off fighting Izzy and going and training with Izzy afterwards. They had turned down the UFC, I think, for 2 or 3 years before he actually took the fight, and they wanted him to be ready to go to the top and fight the best guys in the world and be the champ. And he went and shown he did that, and I wasn't ready to be fighting like the top 15 guys in the UFC when I was in the when I signed with them. So I kind of thought about that, and I had obviously everyone had a shitty time with COVID and not having fights, and kind of trying to build back up into it all. But in the back of that kind of stayed with me in the back of my mind, and it didn't really matter. I was like, I'm just going to keep getting better and better and better. And then when I finally do get my opportunity to compete on like a world stage like the PFL, I'm going to show that I have been working since then, and I'm ready to compete at the highest level and show why I'm one of the best fighters in the world.
And absolutely, man, on a 4KO streak in the PFL, or 3KO, sorry. Just on that too, like, I guess, is that some kind of advice you probably give to some up and coming fighters who are a bit younger, maybe, who are kind of reaching for the UFC but probably want to get there as quick as possible, but maybe putting that off a little bit is probably better?
Yeah, definitely. That's I've actually talked to people about that before. I've talked to some people at the gym I'm at here in Denver about that. There's no rush, and like if you're good enough, obviously you want to get there. You want to be in the UFC, say you're in the UFC, actually get paid, a bit more money and be able to afford things. But yeah, it's still trust me, it's the worst feeling when like you get in and you get out straight away. I was in there for like 8 months or something, and then I was out. It's devastating, and that was a huge setback for me, but it was definitely a good thing that happened in my life. And I learned from that, and I've improved. And everyone's going to lose and have setbacks. So until then, I was kind of cruised up into the UFC. I was kind of winning every fight. I was like, this is just going perfectly, and life's not necessarily perfect though. But definitely you don't need to rush there. Even my coach at the time, I had only been training with him, Liam, for about a year. He said to me, I think he said after though, like he said, he was kind of talking like maybe have another fight before, like there's no rush. But I guess since I hadn't had him my whole career, I didn't have that full trust in him. And I was young, dumb, and just had the mindset, I'm ready for the UFC and I want to be there. But yeah.
You sort of mentioned losing passion in one of the previous interviews that you've done around that time in the UFC. Now, was that while you were in the UFC itself, or was that after you'd left?
That was during. It's quite strange. There was just a lot of things going on. I had moved cities, so I was training in Sydney at that time, and I was probably there, I'm not sure, maybe a year or maybe less than a year before I got into the UFC. I was having a lot of, I just wasn't living the best. I was having a lot of mental health issues. I wasn't particularly the happiest person at the time. I kept having like depressive episodes and being quite self-destructive in that kind of sense. And I had a very bad relationship at the time, quite toxic relationship that was probably causing some of that. So just a lot of things, you know. I love being home. I know I haven't been home for a while, but like just being home with family and friends. And I was in Sydney, and just that whole busy Sydney life kind of, I guess, got to me a bit. And it kind of felt more like a chore to be training, and I wasn't like loving what I was doing that much. And then since I got released from the UFC, I decided, you know, I had to think like, am I going to continue doing this, or, you know, am I going to continue fighting for pretty much no money and, you know, be poor for a few more years to try and work my way back to getting at it? And I kind of just took some time, like a step back, and wasn't planning on necessarily fighting any time, but I was training maybe once a day just because, you know, I've always trained and I like training. And I think bringing that, you know, training from 3 times a day, having to train 3 times a day, to training once a day just because you like it, doesn't matter if you miss a session or anything, kind of made me love it again and enjoy it. And that's when I started having a few kickboxing fights, and I was like, all right, let's just, you know, I am loving this again. I'm really enjoying it. So, yeah.
Does the weight cut to 185 have any impact on that feeling as well? Because, I mean, looking at you now at 205, it looks like you'd be absolutely struggle to be making the middleweight limit again.
Definitely, that was people used to ask me going into my fights, like, are you excited, blah, 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 what? And I was like, honestly, I'm just focused on the weight cut, and that was my main thing. And once I made weight, then I could kind of focus on the fight. But before that, I was just kind of always, you know, focused on the weight cut. I had my first fight when I was 19, and I cut a little bit of weight for that. And I've been, you know, I've been lifting weights my whole life, and obviously everyone kind of gets bigger as they kind of go into their mid 20s. And my coach, Triskus, from my original coach, he always said I'll end up as a light heavyweight. You know, I've got a big frame. And yeah, I just kind of ended up getting bigger and bigger, and I started getting up to like 100 kilos between fights, and then having to really try and diet down. I think I was dieting poorly. I was probably losing fat and muscle, trying to kind of lose some weight, and then do like really big cuts where I was cutting, you know, 12 kilos, 13 kilos in a week. And fighting Israel, that's, you know, that was my biggest cut. I think I did 13, 14 kilos, something like that in a week. Didn't feel good in the fight. Felt, you know, drained after the first round. I felt really slow and sluggish, and obviously that showed in that second round. And after that, I just decided, you know, when I started fighting and having kickboxing fights at like heavyweight, which was 95 kilos, I was like, this is much easier, no stress. And yeah, I seemed to be performing better as well. So I decided, I did put on a bit of weight. I probably put on about 4 kilos of muscle since I was competing at middleweight, because I didn't want to be like a small middleweight, or like, obviously when you start going into camp, you kind of lose weight anyway. So I try to, especially it was actually over COVID, our gym was shut down in Tassie for like 6 months, and I started lifting weights pretty much like most days. So, yeah.
Getting swole, mate. Getting swole.
You're definitely a big boy, man. Definitely a big boy. I can't imagine losing 13 kilos. It's like cutting off my leg. So
yes, it's not fun. It's not fun.
You mentioned a little bit before about moving to Sydney and how that didn't really suit you, maybe the different contrasts and lifestyles. But man, how about moving to the US? Is that just not insane? Like how are you coping with the move?
The move's been all right. It's you know, everyone at the gym's really friendly. It's like a good crew. I get along with everyone. You know, Denver's not super busy. I'm not like in the city, and I try and get out and go for hikes and get into the mountains, you know, on the weekends or after fights when I've got some time off. So I kind of get that nature feel that I realized I needed when I was in Sydney and wasn't getting it. I've also been lucky enough to have my girlfriend come over on and off, but she's been here for a large portion of the time. So that's helped, just having, you know, someone close to you here as well. Obviously missing back home, and excited to bring that belt back to Australia and see my family and friends. But yeah, it's been good. I like it here. I've been enjoying it, and the training's awesome. And, yeah, it's been good.
We should probably move on to this fight now. We're running out of time. Look, Omari doesn't mind a good wrestle, but it does fly under the radar that you're pretty decent grappler yourself. Obviously, you're quite capable of it. But is that an area you're happy to engage with him on, or are you looking to defend and keep it on the feet?
I'm happy to engage in the wrestling. I think he'll be trying to take me down. I enjoy doing my defensive wrestling, and whether that leads me to keeping on the feet or getting on top of him and doing damage there. I'm not going to shy away from grappling. I'm not going to shy away from it if it hits the ground. Like, I'm not going to just stand up if I'm on top of him or anything. I'm not going to pull guard or anything. I like playing on top, but as we were kind of talking about, I think these last couple of knockouts, people forget that, as you were saying, like when I was in the UFC, I was heavy wrestler, heavy grappler. That was, I got a lot of wins by submission, and most of my career, that's what I was doing. So yeah, I'm happy wherever the fight goes.
The odds haven't been released yet, to my knowledge. Do you feel you'll be the favourite going
in? Probably, since I've got 3 good finishes, I might be like a slight favourite. I don't really think about that too much. My brother gets annoyed. He's telling me to make the fights look harder so he gets better odds when he bets on me. I think the last couple I've been pretty good. Yeah, so but Omari, he's definitely the best fighter that I've fought in the competition, and he's super experienced. Obviously, he's had a bunch of fights. He's competed in the UFC at a high level against former champs like Chris Weidman. So I'm not taking him lightly. It's a good fight. I'm excited for it.
Rob, how do you feel about these kind of quick turnarounds in the PFL? 4 fights in 1 year. Is that better for you, do you think? Or
I've been loving it. Yeah, I've been trying to be consistent or be active for so long. Most of my career, I haven't been very active. Coming up into it when I started winning a few fights. First being from Tassie, people didn't necessarily want to fly you over, so we'd kind of take whatever we could, some short notice fights. Then when you start winning a few, get like a 4-5-0 record, it was kind of, people didn't necessarily want to take that fight with you. I was in the brace tournament, which I think I competed 3 times in the year. So that was like the most active I've ever been. And then after that, it's probably only been 1 or 2 fights most years. So I've been loving it. I felt way better each fight, just being able to be in there consistently. Like before the first one, I hadn't competed in MMA for over a year. I had only competed twice in MMA since I was released from the UFC, and then I was back on a big promotion, overseas. So I kind of had those nerves and that adrenaline kind of dump going into the fight. But the second one, third one, I felt really calm, really clear, and being able to actually kind of show what I've been working on and kind of show that's my goal, is to like show my skill level and show how good I am. And I haven't been rushing anything. I've been seeing it, and I've been feeling good. So I've been loving the tournament. It's good. And then after this, I can enjoy Christmas. I can enjoy New Year's, and have a bit of a break, and then get back into it next year. I like the style of it.
Just on that as well, the points system, does that have any sort of bearing on your game planning going into fights beforehand?
You mean at the start of the season when you get?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, I was asked that a few times. I never really thought about it. Obviously, you want to win. If you win both fights, even by decision, there's a very good chance you're going to go through to the next round. And yeah, most of my fights have come. I've only been to the judges once, and that was in a ring, not a cage. I'd say that was probably the reason. So it's not. It was never on my mind. I was kind of just going in there to do my thing, and yeah.
Rob, I guess some fighters are more decision type fighters where you're definitely a finisher, man. Where does that kind of finishing prowess come from?
It comes from I get tired and go, shit, I got to finish the fight before I pass out. I honestly felt like that a lot in my early in my career. I was just like, God, I'm getting tired. I got to finish it. But I don't know. I don't really. I think I'm getting better at pacing myself a bit. But I think for most of my career, I've been like, just straight out of the gates, going 100% the whole time. And I guess you either break them, or if you don't break them, it might be bad towards the end of the fight for you if you kind of gas out and don't have that gas tank. But yeah, I think I'm good at seeing like when someone's hurt or seeing, when there's the opportunity to finish it, I know I kind of go for it. And, whether that's the ref saying to the other guy that he's got to work when you're on top of him and you're doing damage, when I hear that, that's just a cue to me to go, pick it up even more, go as hard as possible, and the fight will get stopped. So.
Sweet. All right. I reckon we go through some quick fire questions now. You don't have to go into detail on these, but Tristan, what do you want to go one for one and get these last ones out of the way?
Sounds good.
All right. I'm going to start off. How do you see him approaching this first round?
I think he's going to be looking for he's not going to be rushing the takedown, but I think he'll be trying to close the distance. I'm a lot taller, got a bigger range than him, and he'll be trying to put me on my back.
What do you believe is going to work for you best in this fight?
Just everything I've been working on. My boxing's been a huge thing that I've been working on lately, and I think that's going to be the key again, like it has the last 3 fights, is my boxing is going to be able to finish the fight.
The biggest difference training at Factory X in Denver compared to training back in Tasmania and Sydney?
Just the amount of people at the gym, man. We've got like 30 pro fighters every day at the class, sometimes more. The coach is super passionate and, he's awesome to have there. But, yeah, just having those numbers, everyone's got the same goal as you. So, yeah, it's good. It's good to be around those sort of people.
You win the $1 million. What's the first thing you buy with it?
First thing I buy is probably going to be a fair few beers for all my mates who've come over and watched me. But after that, I'm going to be looking at buying a house probably back in Hobart.
Very nice, mate. It's the prices are going up there, so you might want to jump in.
But I might need to win another $1 million before I can actually buy one.
Quick note on Dustin Jacoby. You train with him at Factory X, obviously. Is he a dark horse for the middle light heavyweight title contender in the UFC? Do you think?
Oh, definitely, man. He's it's kind of crazy that he hasn't been given a top 10 guy yet. Still, since he's been back in the UFC, what's he 6 or 7 in a row?
He had one draw like that, mate. Yeah. Against Dion. Yeah,
he had one draw that he took, I think, on a week's or two's notice, but everything else, he's had 6 wins or 7 wins. He's been, his last performance was amazing. It's awesome training with him. That's been giving my confidence when I go out and fight. Like, just being, you're sparring someone who's such a high level in the UFC and a high level kickboxer as well. So, he's definitely a dark horse. I think he'll be cracking that top 5 next year.
Last one for me, Rob. Favorite American junk food?
Favorite American junk food? I got into Five Guys burgers after this last one, and that's probably a bad thing. I had to ban myself after eating a fair bit of that and putting on a bit of weight, but yeah, that's pretty good.
A couple more from me, just 2 more. Any desire to compete back in the UFC in the future?
So one other thing, Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal. I don't know about people having breakfast, but I like as a dessert. That's delicious. I do have a desire to compete back in the UFC. I guess for 2 reasons. Like, one, that I got there, I lost, and I was kind of kicked out, and that was it. So I'd like to go win there. And 2, that's the promotion that people can kind of consider. Like, if you're the champ of that, people consider you're the best in the world. So, like, winning this PFL title, I'm a world champion, but in the rankings and in most people's eyes, I won't be the best light heavyweight in the world. So to get that kind of name, it's probably got to be in the UFC. I will be back there in my career, but at the moment I'm happy in the PFL.
And mate, last one from me. Did you see, you've got the razor tattoo on your forearm, yes? That's correct?
Yeah.
Did you see Curtis Blades? Oh, mate, I felt bad for you. He's properly bit your idea there, didn't he?
He was like his whole arm.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. His razor name, it's already better than mine because of his last name. Razor Blades.
Mate, he was born to be a barber or a fighter that uses his elbows, right? Like they're your 2 options with the name.
It's funny because there's him, and then my 3rd ever fight was actually in America. I was over here training when I was 20, and I fought someone called, his last name was Sharp. So his fight name was Razor. And then they asked me for my fight name, and I just said, I don't have one. Because Razor Sharp, I'm like, I'm not going to say I'm Razor Rob when he's Razor Sharp. So.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that's fantastic. All right, mate, I cannot express how much I appreciate you giving us some time today, mate. It's been fantastic to chat to you.
You're welcome, guys.
All the best of luck on November 25th, mate, and hopefully get the win in, and we'll have a chat to you again afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Thanks, Thank you very much, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Enjoy the night.
Yeah, thank you. No worries.